Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Journey of Plastics webinar today. We're just getting ourselves set up here, so thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today. We'll just give people a little bit of time to jump in. So I think we'll get started. It's 2:30 now. So yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us here today. My name is Edel Fingleton, and I'm the Waste Prevention Manager here at North London Waste Authority. So we often receive questions from our residents on plastics. We get some really good questions, such as what the different types of plastics are, what the triangular symbols with numbers printed on the plastics mean, you know, what can and can't be recycled. So there's just loads of questions that come in. And so what we did was we produced this webinar to help answer some of those questions. And we really hope that you find it useful here today. So just a few technical bits and bobs to go through before we get into the webinar proper. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Hopefully you'll see that now. It's usually on the right-hand side of the webinar screen. In case you should need it, there is an option to add subtitles to your screen. So if you find this useful, pop them on. You'll do this by selecting the CC option on the bottom right-hand corner. But just to note that it's not always 100% accurate, but hopefully it will be helpful. You should, as I said, you should see the Q&A section in the top right-hand corner of the webinar screen. So throughout the webinar, feel free to pop any questions or comments that you might have about the presentation in that chat. And we'll try and answer all your questions at the end of the session. Hopefully we'll have time for all that. But of course, if we do run out of time and we don't manage to get to your questions, please do send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. That's no problem at all. And we'll have our email address for you on the last slide of the presentation. So before we just get, stuck into the juicy bit, talking about plastics, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about who we are and the work that we do. So we're North London Waste Authority, also known as NLWA, and we're the statutory waste disposal authority for the 7 North London boroughs that you can see on the map there on the right-hand side. And so we manage waste transportation and disposal on behalf of these boroughs. So that's serving over 2 million people. And we also manage the recycling collected by 6 of the 7 boroughs, and we're responsible for 7 reuse and recycling centres in North London. You might be familiar with those places where you take your recycling sometimes. So what else do we do? Well, the team that I work with is the waste prevention team. And we work closely with our colleagues across the authority, across North London Waste Authority, and the officers within the 7 boroughs. And really we work together to inform the work that our team delivers. As you can imagine, we're heavily focused on waste prevention, but we do that by working directly with people who live and work and study in the 7 boroughs. So we work to help them increase the recycling and decrease waste. And there's real focus on reuse and repair too. So we work on a broad range of waste prevention topics, really, such as reducing food waste, encouraging the reuse of furniture, exchanging and mending clothes. Our work covers lots of waste prevention themes. And we do that through a programme of outreach activities, including hosting information stalls, delivering presentations, running events, working with schools and engaging businesses. So it's really kind of a broad range of outreach work. But of course, due to COVID-19 restrictions, we've been unable to deliver our face-to-face work and are instead delivering a series of webinars and Facebook Live events, which today's webinar is part of. So now I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Val, and she's going to tell you all about the journey of plastics. So over to you, Val.
Thank you, Adele. I hope just to say if everything is working and I am on the camera so I can start.
Yes, you are.
Great. So hi, everyone. Thank you, Adele, again. So thank you all for registering and coming over today to learn more and chat about plastics. So plastic is one of our greatest inventions, but unfortunately today is also one of our greatest challenges. I believe it was Tom Zaki from Loop who quoted that, actually. In this webinar, as Adele mentioned, I will explain the different types of plastics, talk about its problems, what is happening to fix the problem, and what we can all do to help. So let's start with some background and statistics about plastics. Plastic was first invented in the 1800s by an English guy called Alexander Parkes. And it was made from plant fibers. Then in the early 1900s, the first plastic made from crude oil was created, which is what plastic is made from today. And in 1940, the first PET plastic was made, which is what water bottles are made from. Today, we use 300 million tons of plastics per year, and half of these is used only once and chucked away. On average, the UK households throw away 40 kilos of plastics per year, enough to manufacture 3 of those big recycling bins. This is just a third shy of my weight in plastics. We recycle only 30% in the UK of plastics in the UK, and our target is to reach 75% by 2030. A great challenge ahead. Unfortunately, plastic does not decompose. It will just break down into smaller and smaller pieces until it becomes microscopic. These microplastics will reach rivers, the ocean, enter the food chain, and it is found in our tap water and even inside of our body cells. So before we chat about our common plastics, I would like to just clarify that any material can potentially be recycled. The question to ask is, how difficult and how much it will cost to recycle this? Will the recycled material have any value at the end of this process? Will there be a market for this material? Let's just make a comparison here. Aluminium can, for example, or aluminium in general, can be recycled indefinitely. A can of aluminium such as this will turn into another can, so it is cheaper to reuse these cans than it is to mine virgin aluminium. Therefore, aluminium is currently considered a recyclable material. Now, plastic, on the other hand, is super cheap to produce from crude oil. It is in most things we use. It has a lot of demand for more. And for certain plastics, such as polystyrene, the process to recycle these materials is just too expensive to be economically or environmentally viable. And that's why plastic is a current problem. Going back now to our common plastics. The plastic used in our shopping bags, for example, here in the middle, is most of the time made from LDPE, one of the 7 types of plastics which we will see again a bit later. It's very poor in quality and it has very little value, hence why some borrowers will not recycle them. The plastic used on water bottles here on the left is most of the time made from PET. PET is the most recycled plastic at the moment because it is high in quality and it is clear in color. Normally, the darker it is the plastic, the less value it will have because you can only turn that color into a darker color, right? Just to show this in numbers, Europe is recycling 51% of clear PET bottles and only 14% of colored PET bottles, the ones with a hint of color. You will see a bit later. It's a bit like this one here, green, but this one is made from most likely HDPE. And as we're here, on the top right photo, these bottles are most likely made of HDP or PP, which are a harder type of plastic. A lot of products are made of these plastics, but they are not as desirable as PET. Europe recycles only 19% of HDP bottles. We will see all these plastics again a few slides down when we will talk about plastic symbols and those numbers that you see on the packaging, and everything will be clearer, I promise. So, plastic is used in so many areas of our lives and we don't realize. It's all around us. From the time we wake up using our toothpaste, toothbrush, shampoo, shower curtain, to the time we set our alarms on our plastic clock, our mobile phones, or even the sheets for our bedding that we sleep on, or our pajamas, is often a mixture of cotton and polyester. We are surrounded of this stuff, and as I said, most of the time we don't even realize it. Plastic is very important for our lives, and currently we just can't live without it, especially considering the health sector that really needs, the single-use plastic for hygiene purposes. And here are some things and products, as we talk about the common plastics, that I would like also to share some products that you would not necessarily associate with plastics. Cigarette butts, for example, of cigarette filters, false teeth made of plastic, swimming pools and surfboard is usually a mixture of plastic fibers. Aeroplanes and cars. The exterior of my smart car is actually made of plastic. Clothing made from nylon or polyester. Just a note here, plastic microfibers are washed away in every washing machine cycle when you put your clothes to wash. This will eventually reach the oceans and the food chain, unfortunately. Now, the lining of the socket of a hip replacement is also made of plastic and is made of specific PET plastic. The wall insulation and ceiling insulation, that fluffy, itchy material is made of fiber plastics. Chewing gum is made of plastic. Have a look at what I found online. This is a 5,000-year-old chewing gum. Of course, this is not made from crude oil as our current chewing gum. It is actually made of birch tree resin, but someone was definitely chewing on it 5,000 years ago as they found Neolithic teeth marks on it. I just thought it was a fun thing to share with you guys. Our current chewing gum made of plastic seen here will most likely take 500 years to break down. So carrying on, a dental floss is made of plastic too. Disposable mask, as I mentioned. Microbeads on toothpaste and scrubs, just like the one seen here in this picture. Now, luckily, microbeads are now banned in the UK since 2018, apart from a few products. Otherwise, tens of thousands of microbeads would be washed away for every time someone used these products. Around 10% of the toothpaste, for example here, would contain microbeads. Teflon, the great non-stick pots and pans, that's actually a lining of plastic. It's a film of plastic on the pot. Nail polish, paints, the list goes on. Plastic is just everywhere. So now that we are all aware of the common and the unusual plastics in our lives, shall we see what happens to your recycled or recyclable plastics beyond your bin after you present it for collection in your recycling box or bin? So, your recycling material and plastics will be first sent to one of these transfer stations seen here on the map. Now, this is if you do live in North London. If you live in a different borough, your borough will most likely have a transfer station too, or several. This is where your recycling will be stored until there is enough material to be sent to a MRF. And a MRF, it stands for Material Recycling Facility, as seen here. This is the whole process that happens between the MRF, a recycling process company, and the manufacturer. The whole process or journey of our plastics, okay? So here's your recycled at home, which is sent to your transfer station, and then it gets here to the MRF. So it's where your recycling material will be sorted. There, all your recycling material and plastics will be placed onto a conveyor belt. This will be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where plastics, amongst other things, will be separated by an optical sensor based on their density and color, seen here as the laser is pointing. Then these sorted plastics will be packed into bales, seen here. It is a very cool place to visit if you ever have the chance. Now, these bales will then be sent to a processing company, which is, again, as I showed here, where these plastics that are, compacted in the, in these bales will be shredded, washed, melted, mixed with additives to make it different, densities and whatever whatever qualities that plastic product will need. It will mix with virgin plastics, or virgin plastic will be added to it. So this will also be turned into maybe a different type of plastic, which will then be sent to be transformed into pellets. Okay, now I will show you all these different type of plastics again, as I mentioned on the next slide. But again, the end result of this process are pellets. Now, just showing here, pellets, they look like plastic beads, seen here in this photo, and these ones in particularly, they are most likely PET pellets because they tend to be aqua blue in color. Okay. Now these pellets, they will now be sent to a manufacturing process company, where then you will have the whole process to use these pellets to turn into any other plastic product, or again, as you see here, another plastic bottle. We can explain more into detail if you have any questions. You have the whole process of melting again those pellets to mold. But yeah, it's a very technical process. So, as promised, to go a bit deeper regarding the types of plastics available to us, I will now explain the symbols or PICs, plastic identification codes. Most of consumers will get confused with those recycling symbols and numbers on the products and containers they buy. These triangular symbols became synonymous of recycling, recyclable, or recycled materials, but unfortunately they are only stating the type of plastics they are. They do not mean that the product was ever recycled, nor that it will ever be. So the symbols or codes are a mouthful, but here they are. Pick one, PET, polyethylene terephthalate. As I mentioned earlier, it is what water bottles are made from. It is high in value and typically clear in color, and loads of stuff is made from it. It is the most recycled plastic in the world, and it could have around 25% of recycling or recycled plastic incorporated into the mixture. As I promised as well, here you see the tinted PET bottles, which has less value, as I mentioned. Pick two, HDP, or high density polyethylene. It is harder than PET, hence high density in the name. It is what milk bottles are made from, opaque and white and clearish in transparency. It is also very high quality stuff, so it is the second most recycled plastic in the world. You can see here, the transparent, kind of milkish color of some of the bottles here. But of course, you can add color to them too. A curiosity here is that most of milk bottles will be made from virgin plastic or virgin HDP, and that opaque whitish color is the actual color of a virgin HDP plastic. Saying that, as I mentioned, of course, you can add color to it, like you're seeing here. Now, pick 3, PVC or polyvinyl chloride. It is used mainly for construction, as it is toxic both to the environment and human health, from production to use to disposal. It is nicknamed poison plastic, but it is used everywhere. Pick 4 or LDP, low density polyethylene. It is a very flexible plastic, hence low density in the name. Is the plastic used for disposable bags and squeezable tubes. It is less desirable and not widely recycled. Some buyers will recycle, others not. Pick 5, PP or polypropylene. It is a heat and chemical resistant plastic that will not crack when bent. Popular packaging for yogurt and butter. It is also used for clothing, toys, straws, crisp packaging. It can be recycled, but it is also not very desirable. Here you can see most of lids of bottles will be made of PP or polypropylene. Pick 6, polystyrene. It is an extremely lightweight plastic that can be turned into a white foam-like material, and it is great for insulation. It is the white light stuff that comes in inside the TV box you bought, but it's not currently recycled. And then pick 7. Other plastics. Now, pick 7 is any other plastic or mixture of plastics. It is one of the most difficult to recycle plastics due to its unknown mixture. And there are numerous of products made from this plastic. So, summarizing, okay, PET and HDP, picks here seeing 1 and 2, are widely recycled by most boroughs and worldwide. LDP and PP, so pick 4 and 5, will depend on the borough where you live, okay? And PVC, yeah, pick 3, PP, pick 5, and of course, I'm getting all confused here. Yeah, PVC, PS, polystyrene, and other, which is the 3, 6, and 7, they are not currently widely recycled, okay? Now, saying that though, after all this explanation, we do recommend for residents to check your local council website for recycling guidelines. Each of your boroughs will have a different contract with the waste contract management or managing contract company, and we can't use the PICs to guide anyone to separate your plastic or recycling material. So follow your guidelines on your local council website instead of using the plastic identification codes. This is just for your information, for you to learn what they are about. But yes, generically speaking, PET and HDP are widely recycled, and then the other 3, PVC, polystyrene, and others are not. The other ones in between, you have to check. So, now that you all know your plastics and we know that plastics or plastic is everywhere and we can't avoid buying it, at least some of it. Here are some reasons to why we should at least recycle. If we recycle, we will have less greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere when compared using virgin plastic extracted from crude oil. And greenhouse gases are gases that increase the temperature of our atmosphere, such as CO2. When we use virgin plastics, we release more of these gases. So, if we recycle, this will provide a sustainable source of raw materials to the industry, and it will avoid the use of our earth oil stock. If we need plastic, which we do, and plastic is made from oil, and oil is a finite resource, so it just makes sense to reuse the stuff, right? Recycling is also way cheaper than disposing waste on a landfill, mainly PT and HDP, remember? These are the main ones that really it's worth to recycle. The other types can be too expensive to recycle, depending on the current market. A ton of waste will cost around £90 to be disposed on landfill. And if we recycle this, it could cost around 50% cheaper or more, depending on the contract of your local authority or that your local authority will have with the waste companies they use. Recycling will also free up space in landfill sites, of course, and in the UK we do struggle to find space in general, let alone to find space for landfill. Again, recycling will consume less energy than producing new virgin plastics, okay? This graph here was produced by the Association of Post-Consumer Plastic Recyclers, and it is referring to the world's energy consumption in 2019 for recycled versus virgin plastics. And it measures the energy consumption by CO2 emissions per kilo of plastic produced. Virgin here in light blue, and recycled plastics here in dark blue. So clearly we are producing way more CO2 and therefore energy, consuming more energy if we use virgin than we do for recycled. So the more CO2 emissions we have in any process, that means we will be consuming more energy. That's the way how they measure in this graph. Also, recycling will add the right values and behavior supporting a circular economy. On the left side here, we can see a linear economy process or explanation of the process, where we'll take from nature, we make or produce any product, then we use and we dispose or pollute, you know. So disposing plastics, for example, into the ocean, or polluting our air or atmosphere, for example. And on the right side here, we'll see the circular economy process, or how it should be, where we create a product from recycling or from recycled product. We reuse it or repurpose it, perhaps, fix it maybe, before reusing again to recycle this material into another material. So it's a closed loop, you know, so we're never really disposing, or disposing very little, and again polluting as little as possible, because it's a closed loop. And that's the whole idea behind, you know, trying to be more, to recycle more. And finally, if we recycle, and apologies for the picture, If we recycle, we will have less plastics reaching the oceans and the food chain. This picture here shows the content of this fish's stomach. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Scientists are predicting that by 2050, we will have more plastics than fish in the oceans. A very sad reality. Have a look at this photo now. This is the Rubbish Island. It's called the Rubbish Island, found in the Pacific Ocean between the coast of California and Hawaii. This is just a little bit of it, okay? It is half of the size of America, in fact, but mostly isn't as obvious and visible as this photo. It's more like a plastic soup made of microplastics, which is actually a harder problem to fix, because if it was all this visible, it would be much easier to clean up. And this is just half of the problem, because 50% of all plastics will actually sink to the bottom of the ocean, especially PET, what water bottles are made from, and polyester fibers, what your clothes or textiles are made from. There are 4 more vortexes gathering around the globe formed by the ocean currents. And so these are the 5 in total. The one I showed you is the one here in the North Pacific. So clearly a serious problem, that we need to be aware. Some of the biggest pieces of plastics found in these vortexes had dates printed on them, actually. And they found that some were dated from the 1970s. Now, just imagine how old are the microplastics that, of course, wouldn't have any date on it, that had more time to break down. In here, you see a seahorse, which will grab any floating debris, should be a leaf or twig, but in this case, it's very sad. And they grab any floating debris moving with the current, and they use this as their way of transport. But animals and the fish we eat are eating plastics, thinking it is food. Now, I found a shocking video on Twitter, here on the right, which we will share on the comment box, but we choose not to show during the webinar, as it might be upsetting for some viewers. It shows a fisherman opening the stomach of a fish, and you can almost make up the stomach. You can see how full and engorged it is, the stomach. So it shows opening up the stomach of the fish, and it was completely full and super hard with plastics. This plastic, that animals are eating, it will not go through their digestive system, and their stomach will literally run out of space for the actual food. And ultimately, they will die starved with their stomach full of plastic. Now, the fish that will not die and will get onto our plates to be eaten, meaning it will die eventually, but that will not die, in nature, they will have micro and nanoplastics inside their body cells, as I showed you earlier. Of course, when they will be cleaned up by the micro bits of plastics, the macro bits of plastics, but the nanoplastics and microplastics will not see. We can't even see it. It is inside of their body cells. We'll actually end up getting inside of our body cells. And these microplastics reaching our tap water and food have absorbed along the way what scientists are calling POPs, persistent organic pollutants. They are toxic chemicals that are harmful to humans and the environment. These chemicals will then be absorbed by our bodies, and there are studies saying or suggesting that they can interfere with our hormones and immune system. So, what can be done? What now? There is a lot of pressure for new policies and research, and the European Union, central government, and the Mayor of London are setting targets such as by 2023, packaging will have clearer labels as to whether it can or cannot be recycled. Waste management companies such as Viridor are researching on ways to recycle what currently is not easy to recycle. They also pressure the government to impose manufacturers to produce only recyclable packaging, for example. It is on their own interest, after all, as they sell these recyclable or recycled materials. There is a lot of pressure at the main, also a lot of pressure at the main global plastic producers, such as Nestle, PepsiCo, Unilever, Coca-Cola, P&G. They must allocate some of this of their revenue to research and recycling. We have also the Plastics Pact, a global partnership with businesses, government and NGOs, setting targets and banning plastics. I believe UK or the UK is the first to start with the pact. We are seeing also the comeback of reusable packaging. There are some policies being created to incentive repairing goods businesses as well. So you can fix your blender, for example, like in the old times, taken to a corner shop or workshop. We see this already in Scandinavia. Also policies where manufacturers will guarantee a longer lifespan of their products. There is researching in chemical recycling, really early days in this technology, transforming plastic back into oil. There's research on bacteria and fungi, which can decompose plastics. Plans for cleanups of the ocean. There's an NGO in Netherlands working on this. You all can also, talk to your local councillor or MP. As they can influence central government into creating better policies. And whilst all this is brewing, we can act too. We can be, a conscious consumer by, for example, reducing the use and purchase of plastics such as PVC, the poison plastic, polystyrene, the light material, which are currently not being recycled. Avoid single-use plastics, avoid microbeads products, plastic bags, polyester and lycra or nylon clothing. And we can also try to dispose of our recycling material. This is a big help. We really, as clearly explained, we need this, but we can also try to think about buying long-lasting and maybe second-hand clothing. Choose glass, aluminium and paper against plastic because these materials are easier to recycle and to be incorporated into the next product. Here we can see also a campaign which happened in Brighton, but it is across the whole UK. And we were involved with it too, North London Waste Authority, where you find locations across your city and town where you can top up your bottle with tap water instead of having to buy, a tap, mineral water. So let's try and recycle more, reuse what we already have, maybe give a new life to it. And if I may finish saying, let's think twice before buying what we don't need. This is the whole idea of waste prevention, especially plastics. Recycling is a massive help and it is necessary. But before getting to that, let's avoid getting plastics in the first place. Well, this is all from me. Thank you all. I hope it was informative and helpful. I will now hand back over to my colleague Adele so we can start our Q&A part of the webinar. Thank you. Back to you, Adele.
Well, I did just say thank you very much. for all that wonderful information. And as you said, yeah, we are going to have a look at some of our questions. We got a really interesting one. I'm not sure we have the full answer to it, but it's just interesting to put it out there. How much plastics do humans throw away each year around the world? It's a great question.
Oh, it's a lot. I don't have it right now from the top of my head, but it is a lot for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it is a great. Yeah, go ahead, Val.
No, we can definitely, if the person, whoever is, could be kind enough to send us an email, I will just pop in our email address. There we go.
Super.
So yeah, so then you can maybe send the same question to us if you could, and then we can reply with an accurate answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. And I just, even though I know we don't have the answer right now, it's such an important question to think, yes, plastics are used all around the world. And we're obviously quite focused on what's happening in North London, but, you know, these issues do exist across the world. So thanks for that question. Here's a question that we've already answered, but I think it's worth flagging up again is, why is polystyrene not recycled if it is recyclable and used so widely in everything for packaging?
Oh, polystyrene. Polystyrene, I'm not sure if the person missed my slide. Polystyrene is not widely recycled. Again, maybe the person is getting confused with the symbol. Remember, as I explained earlier, that symbol, that triangular symbol, does not mean the material is recyclable or that was recycled at all. It only states the type of plastics they are. So they will see that as, I believe it's P6, polystyrene, and yes, that means it's just stating what type of plastic it is. It's not widely recycled, and the reason is, as I mentioned also earlier, the reason why any material is not potentially recycled is to do with the cost of the process to recycle that material and what the end result of that process will be. So if the end result of that process will be some pellets that have very poor quality, that doesn't have much use, and there's no market for it, so people are not interested to buy, that means it's not recyclable. And that's what makes something recyclable or not. Now, on the other hand, PET bottles and other materials such as aluminium, it's widely recycled because it can be, you know, recycled years and over again, and it's high in quality, and there's a lot of market for it. People will buy, if I make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's the message, really, isn't it? It's you know, products might have a recyclable symbol on it, but absolutely the first port of call, if you're ever confused about, you know, well, you can or can't recycle from your doorstep collection. We obviously just know about North London boroughs here, but if you are joining us from a different borough, check with your local council.